This week, we take a walk on the wild side.
And I slowly back away from furry fan service.
Hi, I'm Kyle.
And I'm Garrett.
And we watch anime. Garrett, this week we are tackling a show which has captured the hearts and minds of the weeb community. And it's been a lot recently since the anime came out. Full disclosure, I watched this show around the same time as you did, and it only became relevant to me because of how many people dig this manga and have written in our interweeb circles, you have to see Beastars. Well, we're finally doing it, and I will say the show surprised me in pleasant and not so pleasant ways. But first, Garrett, give us a little sneak peek of what new fans are in for with this show.
This has been a wild journey so far, but I don't know if I ever thought the journey was going to have me watch a rabbit almost fillet a wolf.
Yes, I was very shocked at that, and the height difference kind of makes that work a little bit. So Garrett, we are going to be talking about the show that came out the manga that came out in 2016. It became a Netflix original in October 2019. So this thing is only a few months old, and that is the anthropomorphic animal high school drama known as Beastars. A little bit of an explanation of the show.
Say that 3 times fast.
Anthropomorphic high school drama, yeah, with a lot of with furry aspects, which I wasn't quite expecting.
Right.
Mainly because a lot of people thought that this show was going to be I thought it was going to be like Zootopia, from how people explain it to me. And I didn't see Zootopia. I know you have, so you're going to be a resident Disney expert on this. Sure. Or I don't know if Disney did Zootopia. But it's interesting to note because Zootopia came out in March of 2016, and the manga for Beastars came out in October 2016. So you could say Beastars riffed on Zootopia, but I think Beastars may have been in the works beforehand. I don't know who came first, the chicken or the egg in this one, but they all kind of have.
Yeah, but also those Pixar, Walt Disney movies, they take like 4 years in production anyway.
Right, so. And they also cheapen the message. Like Lorax book, one of the most important books of my lifetime. Lorax the movie. Oh God! Order McDonald's and buy this Toyota, and we'll talk about the Lorax. No, we can't do that. That's not the point of the story. So, this anime has, especially recently this year, has got a lot of attention for its storyline. It's won multiple awards, especially around the 2019 mark. But I really have to, before we start, Garrett, tackle the elephant in the room. And I know you noticed this, and it was a real distraction to me, is that weebs, in general, Japanese anime fans, maybe it's because we're older now, but we hate CGI. I hate CGI. And this show was all CGI. And I don't know if that distracted you. I know I showed my wife just recently a trailer for Beastars. She's like, "What are you guys doing this week?" And I'm like, "Beastars. It's an animal."
Okay. First of all, kudos for your wife for pretending to care. She must really love you.
She does. And I'm like, hey, before we go down and record this podcast, you want to watch a minute trailer of Beastars? She did. That was in the vows, Garrett.
Okay. So you were saying.
But so here's the thing about CGI in Japan. Japan doesn't do a good job of it. They just don't. They do a terrible job of CGI. For example, one of the things that really annoyed people was that the re-release of Berserker, people really wanted with a new sheen to it because it came out 10, 15 years prior, and they're like, but then the show is in CGI, and people are like, this looks bad. It's essentially like puppet shows, right? I remember watching the original. Anytime they're moving, it looks janky. It looks slow. The mouths are not moving quite right, and maybe just because we've been tempered to the idea of anime and what it's supposed to look like and how crisp the 2D model has gotten. I don't know. Did it distract you like it distracted me?
Like the whole show?
Yeah, the whole show's in CGI. When it's not moving, it's beautiful. When it is moving, it's distracting. I don't know. Did you have a similar sense that I did?
I picked, perhaps because I'm not so ingrained in anime weeb culture, it was not offensive to me.
Right.
In that way. It certainly felt much different than what we have been watching, and I could tell you in a heartbeat that it was a newer one.
Mm-hmm. Right.
But stylistically that didn't mess with me.
Okay, so for a fan, it's highly noticeable, maybe not so much for new people. Another thing, the other elephant in the room that I really didn't like was Legoshi, who is the main character of Beastars.
Mm-hmm.
He always gets, because it's very in his head all the time, he speaks a lot in inner monologue. For some reason, the sound didn't come out right. So it'd always be like, I'm really interested in her. She's a great girl. I'm just really excited of it. And it's like a lot of like the guy got really too close to the microphone.
Yeah.
So for me, that was a distraction.
Well, I'm sure like the direction he received in like the recording studio was like, talk quietly to yourself.
Yeah, you're trying to be
like imagined whispering in his own ear.
Yeah, and he was just like, you know what's going to really help this effect is if I eat my microphone, because that's what he did in that one.
Right.
Other than that, I was delighted by this. It seemed very, because you watched the first 3 or 4 episodes. I got a little farther into 7 episodes.
Yep.
It was very run of the mill for the first 3 episodes, and then really got good after that. So it's going to be an interesting tale of two. It's an interesting tale of two halves, so to speak, from where we're at.
Maybe when we get off the call tonight, for the sake of like fleshing it out, I will watch another like 2 or 3 episodes, because I mean, there's nothing wrong inherently with the first few episodes, but I feel like I keep cutting myself off at the knees by not going deep enough into some of these.
And I didn't know it was going to be there either, because I just watched at the same time you did. So another thing, if you're going to feel it out, it's more like felt it out, because did you remember the opening to this show was also like, they do these weird things. It's like, it's CGI made. The intro is like felt claymation. I was like, what are they doing?
The intro is the Fantastic Mr. Fox.
Right.
Like it got really weird, Wes Anderson-y, like
with
claymation.
Like glue drool, and like I'm just like, what are they doing? Here's the thing, I love what they went with the music, and that like it really went from like a dark to a light, and I thought that was kind of cute. But
I think that whoever created this show was given too much budget.
I think that is the problem too.
They said, let's do everything.
If we're gonna do furry love stories in high school, let's give them all the money. That's what the kids like this day.
Right. And so, okay, we're getting into furry love stories. Let's give a little bit of a summation of what we've seen.
So what's the show about, Garrett? What is Beastars about? If you could give it a summary, what would you say?
Beastars is about, drumroll, high school.
Yay! We're back in high school, Garrett! We're never leaving! I was not expecting high school either. We're
never leaving high school.
When I saw Legoshi's outfit, because when I saw Beastars, I saw like just like Legoshi in like the suspenders. I thought he was a detective, because I was thinking Zootopia. So when I saw we ended up in high school, I was like, oh, Garrett, I put him back in high school.
Right. So the story takes place in high school. And for those of you out there who've seen Zootopia, which is probably a far greater number of people than who've seen Beastars.
Right.
As Kyle so eloquently stated, and I will now butcher, we're living in an anthropomorphic world, which means that these animals are alive. And we're in a high school where both carnivores and herbivores attend. And just like in Zootopia, there is a stigma around carnivores because inherently they want to kill herbivores.
Because they'll eat you.
Right.
You know?
So the show starts off with, I want to say he's a sheep or a lamb.
He's an alpaca.
He's an alpaca. Tem the alpaca.
Yep.
His name is Tem. And he gets hunted down in the school auditorium and killed. And while he's being sort of stalked, he's saying, you know, I was your friend, all you carnivores are the same, blah, 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 blah. And he's murdered.
That's what made me think it was a murder mystery, too. I was like, all right, I get it. It makes sense. It's a detective show, really.
Yeah, no. And so we, first thing, I don't know if you noticed this, they don't even take a day off of school. No,
that's the thing. We don't bring it up, honestly. Like, I'm at episode 8. We still have not talked about Tem.
Right. So the next scene is, of course, people are talking about it because it just happened. And I'm thinking it's like a week later.
Right.
And then, like, it's either the inner monologue or some other narration says, oh, it happened earlier today. And there is something in episode, like, 2 or 3 where, again, it might have been Legoshi, who is sort of our lead, and he's a wolf, and he's a very socially awkward wolf, where they say, everyone stopped talking about the event because it's so taboo that no one wants to talk about it. No one wants to admit that it could really be a problem that carnivores still want to kill herbivores. And again, in the cafeteria of the school and in this world, restaurants, no meat is ever served.
Right. It's like
So
tofu
there's
and
a
eggs.
carnivore menu and an herbivore menu. Both of them are vegetarian, but they supply different nutrients depending on what those creatures might need.
Right.
So it's a high school tale as old as time. And in fact, it took until episode 3 for me to really be like, oh, there's something here, and I'll tell you why. I was watching the first episode, and like, there's this other character, a female lead, Haru, and she's getting teased by like her roommates who throw her books and her mattress out of her bedroom 6 stories down onto the garden that she's planting because she's the sole member of the gardening club.
Right.
Because she kissed one of their boyfriends, and I'm like, oh God, this is really high school. I really have no interest in what I'm about to watch. And it kind of gets more interesting from there, but that sort of lays the groundwork.
Right. And so
there's a lot of tension.
Yeah. There's a lot of tension, and the big crux of the story involves this one event in which, so we also meet another character whose name is Louis or Rui. They haven't really explained which one.
Yeah, it's both.
It's both, I guess. And he's like the strapping, like thespian of the school. His like the head of the Yes.
Wait a minute. But this is the same thing as Zoro Zolo from One Piece.
Yes, exactly. It's the RL problem. So.
Okay.
So
Rui is a deer, and he's like a 22-point buck.
Mm-hmm. This man got some antlers. Ladies want some of that.
That was more
True
like
stag. Yeah.
It's
like, hi there, everybody. I'm Rui.
I'm working. Okay.
So he's a stag. He's a very popular one. He's very famous for being the like theater guy. He's always the head. He's a senior. He's like the lead
Full
actor.
stop. We went to a school where theater was one of the more popular extracurricular activities, but the lead actor was still not the man in charge on campus.
That's correct. And he has a real stern attitude. He's kind of a real jerk a lot of times, but he asks, so what happens is that they have to recast someone in as a part.
Yeah, because Tem is dead.
Because Tem is dead, and so yeah, duh. And so so they bring the new guy in to do like late night practices, but they're not allowed to be at the gymnasium or auditorium at night. And so while they're practicing, he asks Legoshi, who's this big Hulk, he's like easily twice the size of everybody that's at that school,
right? Even
though he's a nerd, to watch the door. And by the way, this big hulking wolf is like the decoupage guy or the light guy. He's like the one of like the low members of the art department. So the fact that this man is like, he's like, I'm a 6'5" gray wolf. I'm also in charge of all of the bedazzling on this.
But Rui or Louis, he sees something in him. Mm-hmm. It's like he sees that Legoshi, the wolf, is not living up to his potential, and he kind of pushes him to be more fierce. And that doesn't mean necessarily, at least 4 or 5 episodes in, that doesn't mean more violent. Right. It just means more assertive and self-assured.
Right, because he eventually gets asked by Legoshi to go watch the door because he doesn't want to get caught.
Right.
And then all of a sudden, our girl Haru comes by, the one that got bullied. They say she's a real runaround Sue, so to speak.
Right, and
much like Twilight, the very essence of Haru goes into Legoshi's nostrils, and it circles into his wolf brain, and he's like, ooh, I don't know what I feel about this, and all of a sudden his instincts kick in, and maybe you want to take it from here since you saw that part.
Right. No, well, this is where it sort of diverges from Zootopia. So it appears that so far that Legoshi is simply trying to stifle an urge that he's had for 17 years.
Right.
When he's in this courtyard and he smells Haru coming upon him, a switch goes off, and he's this big, dark, shaky animated like demon within him, this animal within him appears and tells him to pounce and attack. The difference between that and Zootopia is in Zootopia there was actual sabotage where they were the villain was using some vegetable or some root or something like that could be processed and turned into a chemical that would backward engineer all the evolution that the animals had gone through. So it was intentional sabotage in Zootopia.
This one is like, I'm a wolf, so my body's telling me I need meat. And a delicious rabbit's coming by. This
leads to a pretty awkward moment where he pounces across the courtyard, he grabs her, and he smothers her. And as he does not bite her, but as he's battling this inner demon, it is long and awkward, and he is talking to himself. And I kind of felt at one point the victim should be like, so you gonna bite me, bro? Or
and she seemed like resigned to her fate at that point because she was.
She said before she got pounced on, she said, "Take me, if you will," because she's pretty down on her wife.
Yeah, she gets bullied quite a fair deal, and he kind of like battles it, and eventually gets past his own instincts, and he actually claws her. She runs away, and he's just like, oh, and he snaps out of it. So really awkward moment, but eventually this turns into like an infatuation with this because he goes. So basically, Lugosi goes to visit Haru. He wants to because he's forced to, basically, but
before he gets there, we have the cafeteria scene where we learn about the two different menus.
Right.
And he's looking at his dinner tray or his lunch tray.
Yeah.
And there's a hot dog bun, and he goes in his inner monologue. But he says, I better not eat this because it's soft. It's going to remind me of her. And I'm like,
right. He's very like, what is it, Edward from Twilight, like very like creepy with his infatuation with this girl. And so we get to a point where the art directors, the head of the art department says, hey, Lugosi, we need flowers for our set. Go to the gardening club. And lo and behold, Lugosi now has to talk to Haru. But he brings his friend along who just straight up bails on him at the last minute because Haru
he doesn't know it's going to be Haru until he smells her right before the door opens.
And then his friend's like, oh, I think I forgot something. Bye! Because like I guess Haru's reputation preceded her. And that's where we get to a point where I was not expecting, but was not shocked that it happened, but I was shocked by what I was seeing. So Garrett, walk us through this because I think it needs a space. It needs a room to be encapsulated in.
So Lugosi has been sent to collect flowers for a hallway decoration to promote the school play that's going to be going on. And he starts talking to Haru, and they're kind of he sees her arm is bandaged. But she's not acting like she recognizes him.
Yeah, like she completely forgot that she was just attacked by this dude.
Well, he's going around, he's asking her questions like, oh, you're the only member. He's getting to know her, and she's like, oh, well, all the others graduated 4 years ago, and no one really joined, and people don't like me. It's a lot of work, blah, blah, blah. Yeah. And then he works up the courage, but he's trying to fight himself at the same time. He's like, you moron, don't say anything, don't say anything. And then he says, how did you get hurt? Because that was the best question.
Yeah.
But she unexpectedly says, oh, you know what? I don't really remember. And he's like shocked by this because it's possible. So I was thinking it's possible that she doesn't know exactly who her attacker is because they're just carnivore. However, as carnivores can smell their prey can smell their attacker. So she kind of has to know, in my mind, who it was. So he's sort of put off by this. She's kind of just like, ha, ha, ha. It happens. I don't really know. And he says, she neither absolved me, nor did she accuse me. So they go into the office, and she's asking about what flowers that he wants and whatnot. And he wants to he wants to stay. He wants to talk to her, but he's trying to think of the right thing to say. But he's like goes into this like stuttering things where he's like his eyes are closed. He's like, and she's like, oh, you're one of those, and he's ignoring her completely. And she like shuts the shades, and I'm like, wait a second. And she starts freaking stripping, right? And she has a little bunny bra and panties on, and he opens his eyes and he's like, oh my God, what is this? She drops to her knees and she unbuttons his shirt and she says, your belly hair matches your face hair. It's so wonderful and cream colored. Show me where it leads. And he's like, oh, is this some sort of weird greeting for rabbits? And she goes to undo his pants, and you see like a tuft of hair, and he's like, no! And he jumps back. She's clear. The whole time, by the way, she has to have super low self-esteem issues because she's saying things like, you're just like the others. So she clearly is putting a lot of her self-worth into performing for men, which is another tale as old as time and a really sad one at that.
Yeah.
But he, despite the fact that he almost murdered her, is a bit of a gentleman, and he like in what is arguably like the most comical moment of the first few episodes, he like grabs a blanket and throws it on her shoulders. He's like, oh, don't catch a cold or a bug bite. And then he goes out the door and he shuts the door behind him and his tail catches in it. And he goes, ah!
So the amount of, I was not expecting fan service first and foremost because I'm thinking anthropomorphic animals, not expecting fan service. But then
probably not just the nipple.
No, it was crazy. It was like the movie Cats, that just came out with the CGI, body form of a human female, but like no nipples. And like, if you were to do like a real anthropomorphic animal, they would have multiple nipples. So this would not just be like, just like a rack on a human woman. It would be like just like multiple racks going down. Like
wouldn't a bunny rack actually be like a bra with 6 cups?
Right. It would be like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah. Like most mammals, it would be like that. Also, like imagine like I'm seeing cows and I'm like, so wait, do they have breasts or they have udders? Which is it? So like I don't understand how the mammary system works on these animals. But guess what? Pervs are like, this is stuff, bunnies. And also, I was confused by the size differential in my mind.
Mm-hmm.
It's like when you see pictures of Shaq and his wife.
Yeah. He
himself being almost 7 foot, and she is 5'2", and you're just like, how does geometry work on this? I don't understand.
Well, also they try and work in on that ratio, but it's still even off. Because she would be the size of his, like, half his leg.
I know. It's like, I don't know. It seems, I get, like, the idea that, like, bunnies, to like, screw like bunnies, I guess it's within her.
And she's like, you're my first carnivore.
Yeah.
And am I your first herbivore? I'm like,
like, I don't know. Here's the thing. As you were saying last episode, sexuality is fluid. You're going to like what you like. And if this is your jam, no problem. No skin off my back, but it was
the
like...
people who wrote this manga and ultimately the anime clearly watched Zootopia on a double screen, and on the other screen was like Pornhub, and they were like, huh? I'll give the people what they want, even if they don't know that they want it.
And also, I think the mangaka Paru of this show is a female. I think it's a female.
Okay,
mangaka.
What's a mangaka Paru?
So mangaka is a person who draws manga.
Oh, yeah.
And Paru is her pseudonym. In fact, she doesn't. You don't see pictures of her. You just see her as with a literal chicken head. Not calling her a chicken head, but actually has a chicken head that she wears, much like Dead Mouse. And so that's something to note as well. Is that this is a female furry, artist lover. So didn't know that was the thing until just now. So you went through 3 episodes. This story really is like a tale of two halves. Now, when I said it surprised me both in good and bad ways, the beginning I was kind of like a little disappointed because I thought it was just going to be just like you said, like we're looking at a high school drama. really kind of annoying, But then
Right.
we get into actually like a much better sense of what this story is trying to tell,
Okay.
in the form of the second half. But before we get there,
All right.
let's talk about what this show also plays with is the Japanese culture idea of herbivores and carnivores. Now, Gary, the reason why the word herbivore and carnivore is so prevalent in this show as well is because it's actually a way of defining men, and especially romantic relationships and like their archetypes in real life.
Right.
So
Yeah.
as Japan got more business focused, people had a lot less time to do leisure activities like the work. I can tell you from working there, you are up in the morning to late at night working. That's what you do. So a lot of times the men don't have a lot of opportunity to go on dates and be romantic and have the life that they want. And so it's kind of developed this kind of subculture of men that they call the So Shokuke Danshi, which means herbivore. So when they call a man, they call these men plant eaters. They call these men herbivores. They're very meek. They are very docile. They don't know how to interact with women. Legoshi himself is a herbivore to a Japanese culture way.
And I mean, I guess that sort of plays into like Japan, for as great as a country as it is in many ways, one of the things it struggles with is its population. It's one of the few countries in the world where its population is going down as opposed to going up.
And it's got a very high elderly rate. So like the amount of elders to non is actually really farly skewed. But but like the idea is that, and so women then, because they got entered into the workforce more, they got more responsibilities. There's a lot more dual income households. Now women are considered a lot that they consider themselves nikushoku kei danshi, which are carnivores. That means that they're players, more promiscuous. They're going to seek out sex. They're going to seek out relationships. And Haru, in this case, is a carnivore, as per what the Japanese relationship. So they play with those two ideas of the actual herbivore acting like a cultural carnivore and actual carnivore acting like a cultural herbivore. So I thought that was an interesting thing I wanted to explain, because you're going to hear that a lot when men and women talk to you about each other. They're like, what type are you? And the men will be like, oh, I'm a herbivore. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm still pretty meek. But also with like the respect that Japan has. Just to give you a little rundown of also the other types that we have the Uoshokuke, which is the fish type. It's like Pokemon. Like, this is a fire type man.
Fish head!
Yeah, he's a fish head! He likes to leave things to instinct and will approach someone when they feel the time is right, much like a fish taking the bait. Does that make sense? Like, you're just sitting there going, like, looking at the ladies like, what's up? And then when the worm gets right in front of your mouth, you go. And that's when you start attacking. So that is the fish type man. Then we have the chicken types, Kei and Nikuke, which means that they're calm and steady. They're kind of consistent with their approach, but then get really aggressive when women are around, much like a chicken is when they eat. They're like, bark, 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 bark. And when they see other people near their birds, like that's
the aggressive part is fine. But chickens, my wife and I own 3 chickens. Yeah. They're decidedly never calm and never steady. So they are loud, complainy, skittish creatures.
And not the brightest either. And then the next thing we have are what's called as the Tonyuke, or the soy men. These are men that tend to act somewhat feminine, using beauty treatments. They diet. They take more care of their appearance than other men might. And that is in order to attract women. This is what we might be conferred to as a metrosexual in the United States. So those are soy men. There's also the Danjiki-kei, which is fasting men, which like to have female relationships but are not interested in sex currently. So they're fasting on sex. And then finally we got the Inu-kei, or the dog boy. They'll be stick around, they'll be loyal, and they'll be good friends.
That is the friend zone.
That's essentially the friend zone guy is considered the dog man in this sense. But Legoshi is all for all intents and purposes is an herbivore. He doesn't know what he wants. He doesn't know how to manage a relationship. He doesn't know how to interact with women. He's very focused on his work, what he does. He's, very introspective. So I thought that was an interesting thing, and I thought I wanted to make sure that got explained first. Yeah. So the second thing,
the Japanese. So I know that a lot of the breakdowns that you give me are to allow for a background in Japanese culture. So I just have like a better understanding. And maybe I'm ignorant to the classes that we have in our own system,
Mm-hmm.
but it seems like they very much like to organize and have a name for something.
Right, much like the tsunderes and like the danderes.
Yeah, like the tsunderes, dandere, yandere.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I guess technically, if you break it down, we have equivalent names, but I've never like watched a TV show and felt like I was studying it to that level.
Well, yeah, I mean, Japan is all about order. It's about,
Yeah.
fitting a role. It's about doing your part.
Mhm.
It's very monocultural, so for that sense you can,
Mhm.
because, a lot of times they share similar cultural language and all that stuff in history. They
Yep.
can go into those old deep dives like we do. So
Mhm.
yeah, I agree. It's the reason why I think it's important to talk about these things is because it does give you a little bit of a background in what Japan is thinking about these relationships as we go forward.
Yeah.
But after we get to the idea of the first 3 or 4 episodes on what this show's trying to say in terms of getting the relationship between Haru and Legoshi through, the weirdness of what it's like to have a 6'8" wolf really like a
Mhm.
tiny rabbit, the awkward relationships between people.
Do they start dating?
Not when I started watching, but
All right.
I ended when Legoshi finally like got with the idea that he actually loves Haru, because he didn't know. So here's where, so I'll get into something that you're going to find out later. So Legoshi is, he goes to, him and the carnivores are asked to go to, because they're part of the play group, to pick up stuff for the festival, because they're not only doing festivals but for the town they're making floats. It's kind of like we would create something like that for like a town fair or something like that. But the character Louis goes, I don't want you guys going to the meat market or the black market. So what they're learning from going from there, because they've only been in high school this whole time, so it's like a boarding school, so they're there all day every day,
Mhm.
is they learn when they get outside, they're like seeing all of the carnivores being really nice, the herbivores being really nice and not scared of the carnivores. Everybody's like really getting along, and they find that the underbelly of this is the black market, and that the meat eaters are constantly going down this thing to eat the meat to satisfy their craving for meat,
Okay.
so that they can then conform to what society's asking for them. So
And Louis knows about this.
Louis knows about this, and everybody knows about this. It's kind of like it's like unspoken taboo of like, even though they're not supposed to do it, it's like society lets it happen because they know that it keeps the peace. And it's
Mhm.
kind of what this show is setting up as the allegory of the kind of how youth takes you to a certain point, and then you kind of like the shades get put in front of you of like, this is what it means to be an adult. These are the things. These are like the ways you have to perform. You kind of have to be performative as an adult. You're gonna have to be, you have to do X, Y, Z. You have to get by. You have to do things you don't want to do. And I think that's what this is.
There are societal rules that keep it together. Whether you think like, I know it's very cool for someone to be like, I'm independent, I do what I want. Well,
Right.
we can't have freaking anarchy. Okay.
Right, exactly. But also it's like the social contract, right? It's not so much a law. It's, you let us do this thing that's illegal, and we will be absolutely peaceful to you. We are deciding on what we accept for the sake of peace.
Mhm.
And that's what the show is setting up. And it no more states this, and it's just like, this is the part that I was like, okay, the show kind of gets me. It's cool. So they get lost, and they get lost in the meat market. They don't want to be there because it's scary. Like, this is the first time seeing meat hanging on the ring. They're worried about what that does to them. And there's this beggar that they want to ask for directions. Like, we want to get back to the train station. We're lost. And he's like a taper, so he's an herbivore sitting at the edge of the meat market, and he's got like a blanket on. And he's like, "Oh, sure, son, I can help you." And he puts up his hands, and each finger has a price tag on it. So it says 80,000 yen, 75,000 yen. This, and you see that some are missing. So this beggar has been selling off his fingers to the carnivores, and he gets into a fight. And so Legoshi is like, and he can smell it. He can smell meat going through his thing, the blood of it all. And he's with a tiger and a hawk and eagle and stuff like that. And he's like, this is what life is. This is what it means to be a meat eater, right? And the tiger's like, oh, I get to chew on your finger. How nice is that? And so Legoshi just gets so freaked out by this that he runs away. And this is where like what you're watching and what I'm talking about is very different. Yeah. He then like passes out outside of the meat market, and he gets picked up by this panda. Okay. Now, these panda is stated to be a very special carnivore because they are meat eaters like normal bears, but they can subsist on a plant-based diet in the form of bamboo.
I can eat bamboo, yeah.
I can eat bamboo. So, like, I can fit within the rules of society. So he gets to this panda, and this panda's tied him up. And he's got this mask on, his muzzle on him. And he goes, the only reason I would see a young man like yourself passed out next to the meat market is that you hunted a carnivore, and the shock of it made you pass out. He goes, so I guarantee you broke the taboo. You didn't go to the meat market to buy meat. You actually ate someone. So he's like, I want to rehabilitate you. So he's like, he's like, well, why did you do this to me? Why'd you tie me up? He goes, I want to make sure you're not going to go out there eating more people, that you didn't get the taste for this thing. But it's the fact that Legoshi was so shy that it was too much for him. And
so we've got a Dr. Phil panda.
Yeah, a Dr. Phil panda.
First of all, you ate an herbivore. Admit it.
Admit it. All right.
So she's like, cash me outside. How about that?
So he goes, and so the panda goes, hey, and so he says, like, I see under your fingernails, I could smell rabbit blood under your fingernails, so you must have eaten a rabbit and stuff like that. He goes, no, I didn't. I touched her and I attacked her, but I didn't eat her. And I think I'm falling for her. And he goes, that's not a thing. You are a wolf. Wolves are attracted to wolves. That is weird. And he goes, okay, you know, I know and he shows a picture of all these really broken young carnivores that are like really messed up now because they ate someone and it broke their heart and like messed with their minds. Mm-hmm. He goes, okay, if you want to tell me that you love this animal, here you go. And he hands him bunny porn. He goes, okay, prove it to me. I want you to take this magazine home with you. You tell me if this is what you either have a sexuality that is uncommon, which is not bad. I'm not judging that. Mm-hmm. Or I'm right, and you need to be severely rehabilitated so that you don't attack someone else. So I was like, wow, this show, I get this show now. This makes much sense, but you have to.
So did he go home and yank his fur to bunny porn?
Did he follow the cream trail? No, the cream-colored belly fur. No, so his buddy, who's a dog, he's a Labrador Retriever, finds it.
Which, by the way, as a Labrador is a
canine. They are related, and wolves and dogs can procreate.
Okay.
But he's like, man, I found this. What are you doing? And he's like tackles the guy. He's like, where did you find this? I was, and it was like it's like awkwardly when someone finds porn on you. It was like a lot of that, and then you meet. So just to kind of like button it off is eventually you find a new class of freshmen are coming in, and one's a female gray wolf. So she likes him, but he loves Haru, and so it's like this like interplay of like, which should you do? Should you follow your heart, or should you do what your biology is telling you? So it's I think for me to kind of like button off what the show's all about is that like idea of how do you fit in society? Can you be unique? What does it mean to become who you're meant to be? It's a really interesting story, one that I don't think you get past 3 episodes, but yeah. So what do you think about all that craziness I just told you about? Was it very
Well, and in the background to all this, the title of the show, Beastars, is they talk about Louis/Rui wanting to be a Beastar, which again is like class president or something like that. So does that play a larger role as well?
Once again, it's a thing that it's like a MacGuffin. It's a thing that gets brought up, and then they don't bring up Beastars again. I think it's like a title you get after you're done graduating, that you're like a proper representation of how you talk between the species. And I don't know. It's a weird MacGuffin that doesn't really get talked about. So, but yeah. So we got panda. I mean, we got a panda trying to get a wolf to watch, bunny pornography. We got tapers selling off their fingers.
So I just want to reaffirm this is nothing like Zootopia.
So let's talk about Zootopia. So tell me what Zootopia's central message is, because if it's very Disney, like if someone was to watch this show,
we're all people, respect one another.
It's an allegory for racism, right? Isn't that the thing?
Yes, it is an allegory for racism, which is not too different from what Beastars is going through, and the prejudices that we all have. Right. And in Zootopia, it really focuses on the relationship between foxes and bunnies, in particular.
Do they have fox bunny relationships like in this show?
No, they don't. Jason Bateman, the fox, does not have sex with the bunny, whose voice I forget who it is. Um,
You don't see bunny bras.
but the villain was actually like the vice mayor, who's like this little lamb who wanted power over the city. So she had these wolves. She hired wolves which howl indiscriminately all the time. It's sort of funny. I enjoy the movie for what it is for Disney. This obviously took a look at that and said, well, Zootopia had 90 minutes, and they dedicated 5 minutes of that to a Shakira giraffe shaking her butt. I don't know if she's a giraffe, but Shakira is like, yeah. And she's singing like her Africa song from like the World Cup. Africa.
My tongue is black.
So they cut all that crap out, and they're like, oh, Beastars, let's like really dive in. But we've sort of seen that over the past 10 years. I mean, actors and actresses doing TV, going from movies to TV was seen as like the biggest downgrade ever. Mm-hmm. But what we're really learning is instead of quantity for TV, we're focusing on quality. And perhaps nowhere was that more apparent than obviously Lost was great, but right. They were still pumping out 22 episode seasons. Right. I would argue that Breaking Bad, with its hyper short seasons on a cable right. network where they could get away with more, certainly more than right. any, obviously HBO can outdo everybody. Right. And Cinemax right. can outdo everybody. But ultimately, I think what we're finding is that movies can continue to be great, but you can have this much more in-depth, layered, beautiful story if you gave it like a mini series or if you were able to stretch it out in a regular series. And so I think that's sort of like, Beastars was like, oh, Zootopia, that's cool. Let's show you how it's really done.
I think also for me, this lets you show why I appreciate Japanese storytelling over American storytelling, because American storytelling in the sense of like Disney movies and stuff like that, especially with something like Zootopia, is it's very blatant with what it's trying to tell you. It's like, this is a metaphor. And it's like really trying to like get you, it's like ram the metaphor in your face. Japan takes its time with those things, and Japan will make it so that it hits multiple threads at the same time. And I feel like it's a little less surface level than what I'm hearing.
But to be fair, Disney is a multi-billion-dollar conglomerate, and they're not just trying to get you to the movie theater to see Zootopia. They want you to buy Zootopia toys and Zootopia t-shirts and all these other things. So I respect Disney. Look, if Disney can execute well, they can be really entertaining movies. They're never going to have the depth that you want them to have.
Right.
But that's because they've got to make $500 million to $1 billion on the movie, or in revenue anyway, not in profit. But then they got to sell $500 million worth of toys and
McDonald's
theme park experiences, because they've got to try and every bit of IP, intellectual property that they come up with, they've got to squeeze every last dollar that they can out of it. And that's just how they exist, and it's how they've always existed.
Right.
So, yeah, a manga and an anime, they have no sweats,
But what I think also is really fun about this show is the ways in which they have the varying biologies be represented in this show. So I don't know, but there was an episode in which they said, okay, all students, let's go to your time for biology time. And so each student, like for a half a day, steps into a room set aside for your species. And like for the polar bear, they're in like a little igloo. For like a lizard, they're in like a high degree temperature. For other species, they have like their thing. And for wolves, they just put them in a dark room with like a moon in it, and they're just like staring at it, just like. Like, I don't think that's what wolves want, and I know that's our perception of them, but it's just like, it's like them going and like just satisfying the urges of their species beforehand. But
you know what this show also did that reminded me of One Piece? Was remember how we discussed that the versions that are posted on most streaming services now don't have this in One Piece, but in between the episode breaks, they have the wanted poster come up.
Yeah, they have that mid card.
Beastars did the same exact thing with the school ID.
With the school ID, and it gives you its species and stuff like that. Another funny part that I thought was fun was you meet a hen whose name is Lacom, and she is like very close because it's Legoshi and Lacom, and so they're very close in names.
Mm-hmm.
And she's a hen, and she takes her role as being the ones that provide eggs very seriously. And so she doesn't. She's like kind of a tsundere chicken, and so she sits next to Legoshi all day, and she's like, I don't know, you jerk. Like, when you start talking to me, like, mm-mm. But she secretly waits for him because every Wednesday he eats an egg sandwich that he says is the best egg of all of the sandwiches, and that's the days she gives up her eggs is on Wednesday. So he's like, she's like, yay! Someone really likes the eggs that I laid. It's like,
oh, well, that's interesting. So they're not allowed to eat meat, but eggs are fine.
Eggs are fine because if you think about it, it's unfertilized, so it's not. It cannot be a chicken. So. So it's never really a chicken at that point. It's just half of what potentially could have been a chicken. So so the chickens are very important in this society because they provide protein for the carnivores.
Right.
On top of the tofu. So
I love a good egg sandwich.
Who doesn't love a good egg sandwich? And the way they do it in Japan are really good. So I think the big thing is that I really appreciate the depth by which the show goes. I appreciate the ways in which it doesn't just do surface level stuff with the idea of carnivore, herbivore. It goes a little deeper. It plays onto taboos, and it plays the idea of being what it means to be to grow up and to learn and to be an adult in society. But I think the big question is for you now, knowing that you've done 3 episodes, you know a little bit more now that you've heard about 4 episodes. Would you keep watching, and what are some things that you hope come out of your experience with it?
As long as I continue to see the little N for nudity up in the corner before every episode.
I was shocked. I was like, I remember that caught my eye too. I was like, I'm watching Beastars, and all of a sudden I see M for nudity go,
I remember being like 10, 12, 15 years old and watching HBO after like 10 or 11 o'clock at night and not really knowing what was going to come on. Sometimes I have the HBO guide, and I just wait to see like the following program has, and if it had like a BN for brief nudity or nudity, I was like, well, I guess I'm staying up just a little bit longer.
And it's not like Family Guy where it's like, now up is Striptease, yay, by TBS.
Well,
so back to
so again, to go back to something I said earlier, I think on a couple of the shows we've watched, I might have underwatched. I try and do as many as I can. I try and get 4, 5, 6. This week I only got to 3, but this is probably the first time of all the shows we've watched where at the end of the 3rd one, and I just ran out of time, I thought, crap, I wish I had 2 more. I wish I had 2 more. So that either indicates 2 things. 1, guilt that I didn't watch enough, or perhaps more true is it's good and it's making me say, because if it wasn't a great show, I'd be like, all right, here's, I watched 3 episodes, I don't need to watch anymore. But here I am thinking, I could probably watch 2 episodes before bed tonight, just to at least to get up to where you were and see that whole meat market scene, which sounds like a real trip. And I'm sure there was a whole lot of inner monologuing going on.
There was. So, another thing that I'm really looking forward to is I hope they come back to the Tem murder mystery. I don't want that to go away. Like, don't show me that in the first 3 seconds and then not bring it up for at least 8 episodes. I'm interested in Legoshi.
So, are we supposed to believe that was Legoshi?
It's a carnivore, so we don't know, and I don't think it's Legoshi because.
Right. So
I mean, the silhouette
has to come back, right?
Yeah, it does. It has to, but also like the silhouette didn't look like Legoshi. It looked like a tiger, a bear, or like a big wild cat. Like it looked like a bigger, beefier animal than a wolf is. So I was like, it's obviously not Legoshi. So we're gonna hopefully figure out who it is. I want to know what that's all about because I want to know the psychology of someone who it's kind of like Fullmetal Alchemist. When you break the taboo, what does it turn you into? Like with Edward and. They feel guilt and sadness and responsibility. But for most people who broke the taboo, it gave them God complexes and made them evil and made them realize that now the law's broken, like morality means nothing to them. So I hope that they pull on that thread a little bit. That's something I'm looking forward to. I want to see that play out, and I don't want it to take too long to get there. I don't know. Did you got the same idea?
You're like, I don't want it to take too long to get there because I don't want to watch a lot more episodes. I just want to watch a few more and get what I came for.
I have a certain threshold of how much fan service I'm willing to tolerate. Like furry.
To be fair, in the 3 episodes I watched, there was not an accidental oops, I fell on you.
I fell into your cottontail. Like, wasn't that? Like, it wasn't that version of it. So that's what I'm hoping for. Or is there anything else you're looking for with if you potentially want to watch it? And the question is, would you keep watching?
Yeah, I would I don't know if I'm going to. I'm absolutely open to the idea of it.
Right.
And it's a little weird in concept. I mean, because honestly, if you took all these characters and you just put them in human form, one, it would make it a little more standard issue.
Right.
So perhaps it'd be a little more boring.
Right.
But the actual themes and storylines are ones that appeal to people all the time.
And I think the anthropomorphic animals do service to those messages, right? It's not just, like you said, it doesn't take a boring story, add animals to it just to make it interesting. It actually uses animals as a service to the story and what the messages are.
It's also a tool. People, who used to do this a lot? Star Trek.
Mm-hmm.
I've told you this before, that Star Trek in the 60s and Star Trek The Next Generation were decades and decades ahead of their time on social issues. But they never had these big conflicts with humans because we as humans have an ego where we're not always willing to look at ourselves and recognize the blame in our own behavior.
Right.
But when you have an episode on essentially what is transgender aliens and you're making them choose a sex, any human can sit there and go, that's not right.
Right.
And some of them understand that it's a reflection upon our own society.
Right, exactly.
But others don't really see that. But by putting it in the animal form, I think it allows more people to join in, because if it was just regular stuff, maybe be like, this is too political. Right. This is too PC.
Right.
But when you put it in this setting, I think it maybe invites more people to look at it because they don't feel personally attacked.
Right. So knowing that you might want to watch it again, so let's get into the idea of our Weeby Noob score. For those of you, this is your first episode watching us, welcome. Rate and comment on our podcasts. We appreciate you here. But if this is so Weeby Noob score is the idea of not so much is it good or bad, because you and I usually pick stuff that's either like very good or something that's bad but just to mess with you. Like so know that like most of the time I pick stuff in that category. It's really the matter of like prioritization of where you should go if you're tackling it as an avid consumer or someone who's trying it for the first time, right? Like for my Weeb score, it's identifying, you love this thing, you only have so much time. Where does this kind of go into your queue line? For a noob, it's like, if I'm gonna jump into this thing, what priority does this get over in? So for me, I give this a 7.5. What I would say is, I think this is another one of those cases in which the manga is probably what you want to do over the anime. And what I'll say is, I'm not gonna watch this any further. I'm gonna read it.
Okay.
Because I feel like I'll get more out of it that way. I'm not going to be distracted by the CGI, which I think for me is a little bit too much. I'm having issues watching the CGI.
Okay.
I don't think Japan does it well yet. It will, but I don't think it does well in this case.
Yep.
So what I say is, story's great. Get past 3 episodes. If you like the anime, if that CGI doesn't bother you, you like the music, which I thought was really kind of cool. I like the music in this show. It was very kind of kakegurui in that like kind of like jazzy, loungy style.
Yeah.
I would say go for it. It's a good show, but for me as a fan, I think it's better to buy the tankobon, go to your local, Barnes and Noble or wherever are selling books currently, and just read it. And I think you'll get a better experience out of it. So 7.5 Weeb score. What is the noob score for this show for you?
I'm going to give it a 7. And the positives behind the 7 are, unlike, I actually disagree with you. I think a noob looking at this
Mm-hmm.
would not take issue with the animation so critically
Mm-hmm.
as you are.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they might not like it because they don't like it, but they're not going to be like, "Oh, I don't think Japan does CGI well," because they have no idea.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and so I think that it is crisp, and I think some of the things that they do, like with Legoshi's inner demon, and how they animate that, I thought that was kind of cool.
Yeah.
I also can see, after we've talked about it a little more, you and I,
Mm-hmm.
how they could really attack some interesting social issues.
Right.
And I think it would be a lot more, there would be a lot more depth than some other BS that's out there. And those are the positives. Negatives, you always ask me about barrier to entry. Some people are not going to be able to get past the fact that there's furries, that there's animals mixed having sex. I mean, I don't think anyone's going to be like, you know, that's blasphemous, but they're certainly going to be like, that's a little weird, and I don't know if I needed that.
By the way, Garrett, just so you know, you haven't seen this yet. Louis has sex with Haru, and you actually see them in bed doing it. So, don't know if that affects your score or not. But
well, I mean, at least they're both herbivores, and I mean, Haru is a
white dwarf rabbit.
No, she is a oh god. Is she a
She's a white dwarf rabbit.
Danshi?
She's a carnivore. Yeah, she's a Nikushoku Danshi. Yeah.
Yeah, Nikishoku Danshi.
Yeah,
you know, I would say that she is a woman who knows what she wants. However, while I say that in wanting to justify the human female's lifestyle choices to do whatever.
Yeah, no slut shaming on this show. Oh, definitely.
But that said, it's very clear that her behavior comes from a place of pain and abuse and low self-worth.
Right.
And to me, that is not, I don't want to support that the same way I would support someone just going out and getting theirs regardless of who or what they are.
Right.
She's clearly got a lot of pain, and maybe we'll get into that. But anyway, going back to the barrier to entry, I think that alone would knock off 3 points.
Right. I agree.
But it also makes it safer to say, because, you know, someone could watch this show and be like, oh, a wolf and a rabbit, I don't think that's right to watch. But what if it was humans and it was a white girl and a black girl, a white girl and a black guy? You would feel much weirder about that. So again, gives it a nice platform where they can go places where you couldn't go if everyone was in human form.
Yeah, and it's also sweet. Like, Legoshi and Haru's relationship is actually sweet, and Legoshi treats his burgeoning interest in Haru very tenderly, and you kind of root for that. So,
that
I
being
agree.
said, Haru did tell him, "You can be rough with me, and I'll still enjoy it." She knows, she's a girl who knows what she wants, and that's what we'll say there. So once again, Garrett, I appreciate you going on this journey with me. It's a lot to take on. I would say, to button off our conversation here, the one thing you can't say about the show is it is not unique. It is highly unique. You're going to have a unique experience, good, bad, or different. So with that being said, I want to see if everyone out there confers. That's why I always want to hear your thoughts. Is Beastars the type of show that is kind of a Zootopia ripoff, or is it something that really takes an interesting topic and makes into some real social issues? Were you turned off by the furries? Were you turned off by the CGI? Or are you like Garrett and willing to explore things differently that you might not have done before? Let us know in the comments below, because we really want to continue the conversation. Once again, what's really important to us is if you rate and like our stuff on our podcast. It really helps us get up the lists. But other than that, you can follow us on Twitter at weeb_noob, or you can find us on anchor.fm, which we are housed. But before we end the conversation, Garrett, do you have any final words for the people out there? Legoshi is a big bad wolf, and he is going to blow Haru the rabbit. Or maybe vice versa. I don't know.
Right. Yeah, it's like, I don't know what kind of avor it is going to be in this situation. So. With that being said, we're going to take our two dirty minds out of this situation, put on our joint furry costumes, and give you all a big see you later.
Take care, folks.
Don't be an herbivore and get ready to pounce on that subscribe button.
We love taking turns between the weird and the ultra classic. So if you know of either that you want to share with us, put them in the comments below.
To be honest, I've never been with a carnivore before.
Huh?
Don't worry, it's fine. You can be rough. I can handle it.